Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark. Today I am joined by guest Jessica Lackey. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
So today we're going to talk about your book, but before we do that, could you tell folks a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I work with expertise based business owners to help them grow and scale with sustainable foundations. A little bit about my backstory. I worked at McKinsey Company, went to Harvard Business School, so I had all the big name people under my belt. I decided I wanted to break out in entrepreneurship. I thought I wanted to become a life coach. That didn't work out so well. I thought I wanted to become a fractional COO. I did do that. But as I was building different kinds of businesses, I realized I was learning from different people and they're all saying different things and some of them conflicted and none of it matched my corporate experience. So that's how I kind of fell in from doing subcontract consulting, fractional COO to now advisor for people building businesses like mine.
Great. So total overlap with the audience, so people should get a lot out of this. So feel free to tell everyone about your book.
The book is called Leaving the Casino: Stop Betting on Tactics and Start Building a Business That Works. So I came into the entrepreneurship space from corporate and you're sold the promises of building a business and you're like, you too can have a six-figure income if you just follow these steps. But the challenge was I came out of entrepreneurship doing multiple things. I was, again, subcontracting. I was working with a couple of my former colleagues from Nike. I also worked there doing doing consulting with apparel and fitness, apparel and footwear industry. I was trying to build my own book of business as a coach. And of course, you're sold on Instagram, all the things you need to do to build a coaching business. And at the same time, I was taking some sales classes and I realized that every single part of the online education business was telling you different things. And if you try to apply the tactics in building a Instagram life coaching business to building a consulting business, you were going to lose.
Mm,
And really, the only people who are making money in some of these places were people selling you the solutions for how to do their signature process, implement their signature tool, do this thing. I remember when I started, I bought a very famous digital course academy program.
mhm.
And I'm like, well, in order to make this work, you have to sell to an email list. And I don't have an email list. And my clients, I don't think, are buying from an email list. So why did I spend my money on?
Mm.
That's where the original premise of the book started.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can identify with that frustration. It's kind of like starting with tactics that maybe worked for someone else might not work for you if the objectives were different or the starting point was different or whatever. Tactics are just tactics. There needs to be an objective and a strategy, and then the tactics either make sense or they don't make sense. Okay, so what's the casino metaphor?
So the
Like,
casino metaphor is that every time you come to a decision in your business, you come to a pricing decision, a hiring decision, a marketing decision, there are people shouting at you, telling you simple things to do, like betting. So the tropes in pricing, double your prices, charge your worth. If you know, get a 50,000 client, not a five, 10 $5,000 clients, all these simplistic advice that seems like you're just betting on these tactics. But when you bet on the tactics without understanding the foundations behind the scenes, well, I don't know. Can that client afford $50,000 depending on who you serve? Maybe not. So without understanding that, people just bet on the simplistic advice and assume it's going to work out for them. But really, then all they're doing is lining the pockets of the people selling them these simplistic tropes.
yeah,
The casino is very much like people are selling you a dream, telling you, oh, just pull the slot machine and post on LinkedIn every single day and you'll be successful. You know, well,
yeah,
some people can play the game. The amount of people who spend tens of thousands of dollars of content every month. Yeah, it's like the card counting teams. They probably can beat the house, but that's not you and me.
right, right. Okay. So, what are some of the frameworks that you outline in the book? We were chatting a little bit before the show about a few things that I think would be really interesting. So, I think one of them, you tell me, but it was something like the types of expertise based businesses. So, how do you break that down?
So the overall framework, just to let the audience know, there's two parts of the book. One is called the big decision or the big questions. So these are the questions you have to ask to understand what it is you're trying to build. And then when you understand your navigational beacons from the big questions, then is all the big decisions. How do you apply that to pricing, hiring, marketing, offer design, and time management? So the first of the big questions is, what kind of business are you running? Because there, I call them two types of businesses with archetypes underneath. There's the delivery style businesses, and then there's the creator style businesses. And within delivery, you have what I call the craftsman, the advisor, and the agency. Someone who, in your audience who's doing the hands-on coding, who's doing the technical part, that's a different business model than the person selling the strategy. It's important to know what business you're running in order to know what marketing and pricing rules you should be thinking about for that type of audience.
Right.
And then on the creator side, there's teacher, gatherer, and edutainer. So you kind of have gone from the delivery side to more of the creator side, which means the way you market your business and the way you structure your team and structure your time looks very different than someone who's working 20 to 30 hours a week delivering for clients. So when someone says, "Oh, well, I just want to build a business like Jonathan's, and so I'm going to have the podcast and the daily newsletter," I'm like, "Well, is that the business you're running?" And maybe it is, but maybe it's not.
Hmm. Yeah. And by the way, that was a very conscious transition for me, although I might not have put those labels on it. In my mind, I was moving from service to product. But yes, it's the same kind of idea because there are a lot of creator things I don't do. Like I don't take advertisers and I don't do affiliate deals and I don't do, there's a lot of that sort of stuff. But yeah, that was 100% conscious. And it's probably no surprise that people who there's an increasing number of people who come to me who are for coaching who are in that what did you call the first one? The service one?
Oh, the delivery based business models,
Delivery
but
based, right?
yeah.
So a lot of people are just like in the delivery based business model and they want to move to the other one, but it's nice to have words around that because I don't really I usually just think of it as like adding products to the bottom of your product ladder and morphing into more low touch or no touch sales and delivery, and that's where productized service fit in the middle. But it's good, it's nice to have those sort of two ends of the spectrum because that really is the move. You're moving from more of a hands-on working with clients, day-to-day client work, and then you're sort of packaging that up in ways that turns you into what would probably look more like a creator model. So I like that. I like that framing.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, "I want to move to something more leveraged." And I say, "Great, well, then we have to do different kinds of marketing." So the marketing you have to do when you work with 2 to 3 clients for a long period of time is very different than when you need 1 or 2 new clients a day.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I always advise people to know what type of business model you're building. I'm making the transition myself, so I've been very busy over the past couple of years as I've tried to transition from services to more of again that creator style model, where that means I'm having to do the weekly newsletter. I'm having to do those, guesting on other people's podcasts like this. I have to do that to get the word out at the same time as I'm delivering for clients. It's a balancing act that not everyone is prepared for. They're like, "I'm going to launch my group program." I'm like, "All right, are you going to grow your list in between for the next time you launch it?"
Yeah.
That requires a different style of marketing than referral based projects and retainers.
Hmm. Yep. Okay, so what are some other ways that people, let's say someone wanted to stay in the delivery business, what are some other ways that they could kind of create leverage there?
So part of it is pricing, which is one of your favorite topics. And then there's also changing and rethinking about your delivery model. But would you like to go to pricing?
Sure. I mean, pricing was probably a slam dunk here. So, what are the different pricing models that you outline in the book?
So I have 5 different models, which I know is crazy because everyone's like 5 different models, but I think it's really important to um, really set the zone of your pricing range. So you have hourly pricing, which we don't want to do here on this podcast, but but it is important to know what your base hourly rate is, and if your hourly rate times the time it takes you to do that offer is more than your market is willing to pay, which is what I call value based or market based pricing, maybe you need to rechange your market or your offer. And so that sets one of the bounds. The next one is audience based, which is how many people need to buy your offer in order to make the revenue you want, and do you have enough buyers in your audience? So that people are like, "Oh, I want to make X, $10,000 a month from a membership." I'm like, "Okay, what do you need to price that membership at based on the size of your audience, and are you prepared to deliver that?" Then there's value based and market based. Value based is what should you be charging to capture the upside for that client, and market based is what is everybody else around you charging, including people that are your peers and maybe your mentors, because it is important to know, are you trying to, where are you positioned in the market, and do you have the cachet to do that? And then the fifth one is called justice based pricing, which is, let's assume that what you would need to charge for your own sustainability is out of the reach of your target population that you really want to serve. Okay, well, how do we get creative with your business model, your offer structure? Who is your funder? So, a lot of times, one of my clients is a philanthropy consultant. So, she works with nonprofits to help them with their fundraising campaigns, but she's being funded by corporate sponsors. So, that would be, you know, the clients who are paying and the community of impact are different. And so that allows her to make that business model work. But that's a different, it's not about reducing the prices, it's about finding a different funding source.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it was on Business of Authority a long time back. Rochelle and I had Jill Conrath on, and she had a very interesting funding model, which I think really would land her in the creator category because she was writing ebooks and then getting them paid for. It was very interesting. Those episodes are still up if people want to search for it. The Business of Authority, Jill Conrath. But yeah, okay. I mean, I don't think that's a an overwhelming list because not all of them would probably. I mean, not all of them are going to apply to every individual. Like, there's going to be. So what are some of the ones for delivery based? What are the ones that you think? Well, why wouldn't you do a value based model? Like, give us some reasons why you might not be ready for, let's say, a value based model if you're delivery in the delivery business.
Well, it could be that you don't have enough. You don't have enough experience delivering what you're delivering to really capture that value. Or it could be that, it takes you, for example, it takes you 50 hours at $100 an hour to do a brand for somebody. So you've got a brand, you do one of those, that's $5,000. If your target market is very early stage solopreneurs, that's about how much you're going to be able to charge for that. If you're working with, a Series C startup on a rebrand, I hope you're charging a whole lot more than that because the value is so much different. But it's really important to know that if you're trying to, if it took you, what you quoted you in the book, actually, this part, just because it's an expensive solution for you to deliver doesn't mean it's an expensive problem for them to solve.
Right.
And that's where the mismatch comes in. Is if it takes you, so many of my clients, they doubled their prices in order to have the right hourly rate, but then they outpaced their market. Like, they were like $10,000 for like website copy for early stage solopreneurs. I'm like, I don't have that kind of money. They don't have that kind of money. If you plan to change your prices to meet your hourly rate, you got to find a market that's going to pay for it, or change your offer so that it doesn't take you so much time to deliver.
Right. So there's a bunch of dials there. I'm glad this is a fun conversation. So, and when you say your hourly rate, you mean your target effective hourly rate. So, like, you want to be profitable.
Yeah. And also, if you divide it by the total amount of working hours you have, well, you're going to work less than you think, and more of those hours should be spent doing marketing and sales than billable. So there's a whole calculation for how to think about how many hours you're actually working and can quote unquote bill. But yeah, if you take your billable hours and you multiply it by how long it takes to do the thing, and if it's something that's kind of unreasonable for your target market to pay, we got to do something different versus just say the higher price and hope and
Yeah.
pray.
Right. Yeah. So, right. So, to me, I mean, I think you've outlined exactly the dials, which are um, get a buyer or attract buyers that have more buying power, that are richer, frankly, uh, or offer them something that costs you way less to deliver, but perhaps isn't as awesome as what you could do if you were really, rolling up your sleeves and doing everything by hand. And this, a lot of times, is the path into productized services or a product model because it's like, well, if I'm trying to sell copy to, what do you say, early stage, like consultants, like consultants that are just getting started, and you need to make $10,000 in order to justify all of the work that you're going to do. And it's like, well, okay, no one's paying it. So it's just not worth that to them because of the situation they're in. You can either get people, like you said, like Series C, air quotes, startups. And, but if we stick with the copywriting thing, it's like, well, who does For whom would $10,000 for amazing copy be a no-brainer? It's so it's not a good fit for the market, brand new consultants. So what can you do instead? Well, something that's not as amazing, not as all singing, all dancing, not as hand-holdy. Maybe it's a course on how to write your own copy. Maybe it is a plugin for WordPress. Maybe it's some kind of tool. Maybe it's boilerplate. Maybe it's a community. Maybe it's something else that that for I know from talking to a lot of people who are used to the delivery based business, they're like, well, but they feel like they're cheating clients by selling them something that isn't as awesome as it could be. You know what I mean? Like I could do a much better. I could you could buy something from me that would give you a much better result, but you can't afford it. So, and then they end up in this dilemma where it's like, well, I don't want to sell them a course because they're just going to watch it and not do anything. They're afraid that they're never going to follow through with the execution. So it's like, well, you then find someone with more money. Like if you only want to deliver in that model, you have to find someone with more money. Full stop. There's not another way. So, or if you really, really want to serve these new consultants, you have to lighten up or like think more broadly about how you can deliver some value to them that's going to get them started at least and help them a little bit for a lot less cost on your end. And and when I actually have to wrestle with this mindset thing with people on fairly regularly, and the way that I try and illustrate it is I'll say, like, name the last great business book that you read. Maybe they say, um, I don't know, This is Strategy by Seth Godin. And I say, okay, great. Do you think it, Seth Godin could have helped you more if you had a series of phone calls with him and you personally to improve your business strategy than by you just reading the book? And they go, well, yeah, obviously, if I had a series of meetings with Seth Godin to work on my business strategy, it would be way better, right? It would be way better outcome. And then I'm like, well, do you feel cheated that he only sold you this book? He's like, as if that is somehow cheating people, because it's only 20 bucks. So it only has to help a little bit for it to be positive ROI. And and as a buyer, what I'm trying to do is get them to realize as a buyer, they could have been helped more by some author than they were helped by the author's book. And yet they are fine with that. So to me, that's the most extreme example is like a book. It's like 20 bucks. It's not going to do anything for you if you don't read it or don't implement it or don't internalize. It's not going to do anything. But do you blame the author for producing something in this format that can't work? Or, it's like, I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad you brought that up because I think it's a super important point.
And I think it's really important, especially for depending on who you're serving. This is one of the reasons I actually wrote my book, but it's one of the reasons I have courses and I have videos and things like that, because actually, for some entrepreneurs, the newer stage entrepreneurs I work with, I have the videos, they can watch them, on 2x speed. They can pause it, they can take notes, they can come back to it over and over again. So actually it's a different delivery format that's less of me and more on their own pace and their own time. And but I also recognize that if I'm not going to sell the $10,000 website copy to one person a month, and I'm going to sell 10 of these $1,000 courses, I have to go from one client to 10 clients, and that changes the marketing. And this is where the decisions about the business you want to run come really into play. Like, you know, do you go up market? Do you find the person with the expensive problem? Or do you decide that you really want to start marketing in a different capacity? Neither of those are bad options. You just have to commit to the choice of which path you're going to go down and commit versus Frankensteining
Yeah.
tactics
Yeah.
across the models because they don't work.
Right. Okay. So let's jump into one of what looks like a big topic in the book, which is the zone of enoughness, which must relate to this sort of deciding what kind of business you want to create.
So, the zone of enoughness is 4 different dimensions of your business. I'm under the fundamental belief, sort of like with strength training, you know how they say you can't lose weight and recomp all at the same time. You kind of pick one unless you're really new. I think that's how business works. So, there's money, time, schedule flexibility, and then creative autonomy. And I really believe that once you break into the space, it's very hard to have, like, once you are somewhat established, it's very hard to have more time, more money, more flexibility, and more creative autonomy all at the same time. Because the more you, if you're doing a lot of one on one work, that comes with less schedule flexibility and less free time, but gives you more money.
Mhm.
If you are, your business model is a perfect example. You have, well, to be fair, you've been in the game long enough, so you've managed to get the dials to where you wanted to. But at some point, um, you know, you were probably leaving some money on the table by having the business model with a ton of creative autonomy and a lot of schedule flexibility and a lot of time. But that means you're, probably leaving some money on the table. If you really, really wanted to, you could, you know, do more things. But that gets to the question of want. What
Mhm.
do you want
Right.
in this season of your life, and what trade-offs are you willing to make? And it's a zone because there is too much and too little. There is too little money, obviously. But there's also like time. It's like, well, there's sometimes too little time. Like if you don't have enough time, if you aren't, there's too little time, you're working too much. But then there's too much time where you aren't working enough to keep you engaged in the work.
Yeah, that's happened to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And the same thing on creative autonomy and flexibility. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, I have no deadlines and I have unlimited freedom to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
But then it's hard to stay engaged. People who talk about like getting themselves out of the business. I'm like, well, you have a lot of money and you have a lot of time, but are you connected to the work you want to do? And that's where it's a zone. There's mins and maxes to all those dimensions.
Yeah. That's super true. I mean, obviously, I suppose it's obvious, like a lot of in the space of expertise-based businesses, which almost always, I don't know, it seems like almost always, at least the people that I meet, almost always start off in the delivery business. Like maybe they go to a product business, but I don't work with anybody who started off as a creator. Like everybody was like a designer or is a designer, a developer, an architect, a lawyer, some kind of professional, a coach, and they're used to the hands-on delivery. That's where they're starting from. And almost without exception, they have no pipeline at all. So they've got referrals, and the health of their business really depends on how long clients stay with them. So they get some referrals, and if they have a really long customer lifetime value, the business can be really good. Like they can be doing really well, like not incredibly well, but like 300 grand as a normal year. And they're not crazy busy, but they're doing 30 hours of client work a week because they have these long-term clients who just keep them, and they're on retainer or whatever they are. And the issue is almost never like I'm imagining people listening being like, I can't imagine some of those boundaries that you just described, like having too much time, having too few constraints, like too much autonomy, too much free time, too much creative freedom, and it's like paralyzing. Like you have to have some constraints, or you just, I mean, I've told this story before. Like there was one year I was barely working, and I was just like farting around in the garage. Like, I don't know, I guess I'll clean out the dehumidifier bin, and you almost, it's like, I don't want to be retired. Like, I like my job. I like what I do, so it's like I need to dial it up because for me, the reason I ended up there was because for a long time I had a particular metric that I was paying attention to, but I never had a goal. I just, zero was sort of the implied goal. So it was like I want to have, minimal number amount of client work per week. And I zoomed past what turned out to be my comfort zone without even knowing it, and went down to almost zero, and got really bored and irritable. And I was like, I'm like, why am I in a bad mood? But anyway, I'm just illustrating that because I don't talk to a lot of, I mean, I know normal business people that have this issue, like people that run a laundromat or a car dealership or something, and they have a million employees and it's profitable and they breeze in once in a while and that's about it. And they have this problem too. But service people that are from a delivery background don't know people that are like this usually. It's like rare.
But I think it's important to also talk about sort of the transition period. So as someone going from, I was doing, 30 hours, 20, 30 hours of client delivery. The month back last year, the month I had my best month ever, I almost like crumpled to the ground because I had made so much money. And I mean, so much is, I was making, on average, 30K, 30, 35K. And I couldn't charge more because that was going to outstrip my client base. And that's not what I wanted to do. But in order for me to start building the assets that would allow for more leverage marketing and things like that, I had to shrink my client roster a little bit in order to free up the time to work on the projects that I wanted to. So it was a bit of a what I've heard called a slingshot season. It's this transition period. But,
Mhm.
I couldn't continue grossing the amount of money I was grossing and working the amount of hours I was working, and also build the assets to free up my time and do the writing and build the YouTube channel and the podcast, all the things that you eventually will have to do in order to like have a more of a, again, that creator style business. You don't have to do all of them at the same time,
Mhm.
but I wanted to um, kind of compress the time frame as much as possible, as much as I could.
Yep.
But I had to step back from client work in order to step up these unpaid things. And so my time dimension didn't get any better, but I embraced, the creative autonomy to write the book. But it was a thought process to say, I'm, I have, I have made the money I need to make, but I'm super unhappy with time. I
Mhm.
need to change the dials for, a year
Yes.
or two in order to transition to the new model. And I don't think people talk enough about the behind the scenes machinations of getting, if you were to say, well, I want to charge more for my, the client roster, right? You got to network with those people. You have to standardize, your frameworks. You have to codify your approaches into authority. Go read Michelle's book.
Mhm.
And you have to do all those things, and that takes time. So are you going to, over index on the time bucket, or are you going to change the money, or are you going to be really structured for a while and maybe take on high paying work that you don't love
Yep.
to give you that freedom? Like, it's all choices.
Yeah, I agree. And so it's super, super important because they're hard choices to make and there's no obvious answer, but it gets a lot easier to make the decisions and I think increases your likelihood of making good decisions if you at least know what you're shooting for and like why you're working crazy hours versus just noticing that you're working crazy hours or wondering why you're not making half as much as you did the previous year versus like deciding to make half as much in order to carve out space. And I can think of examples on both sides. Like when I wrote my first book for O'Reilly, I used to like set the alarm for 2 o'clock in the morning and it would go off and I'd say to my wife, like, oh, time to make the donuts. And then I'd go write the book because I was doing all client work back then. It was like 2008 or nine. And so that was during the day. I was busy with client work and admin and other stuff like that. And so at night for like 2 or 3 hours, I would write chapters and send it in, and that was not fun. I know that sounds delightful, but it was not. But the book but laid the groundwork for like a huge catapult forward or slingshot forward after that, because when that came out, it massively positioned me as a very particular thing that was in high demand. So that was great. But then on the other end of the spectrum, I've worked with a couple of people recently, that they had 2 whale clients basically for a long time and lost 1. And they're like, "Well, I've got all this extra time," and they've been doing well for a while, so they've got savings and stuff. So they're like, I think this is my slingshot time where I stay with just the 1 whale client, eat into my savings maybe a little bit, or tighten the belt, whatever, and build some of these assets. They're gonna move me into the next thing, but and they hire me because they don't want to just kind of like futz around and like not really know what they're doing and go into the basically the casino and bet on all these different tactics without any kind of a clear objective or strategy or plan or whatever. And they know that they're just going to be like, I blogged a couple times once and it didn't really move the needle. It's like, yeah, okay. So those are just 2 examples of like not taking a money hit, but taking a time hit, waking up in the middle of the night to build the foundation. And then the other one is like, oh well, I've got all this free time that I wasn't expecting, so I might as well put it to use.
Yeah, these are, to have a down year. I actually did a YouTube video about how this year I set my revenue floor.
Mhm.
because I needed the time for the book and the new website and all those things. And I was like, I can't do this if I'm working with a retainer client. So I need to wind down that retainer client to wind up this business. And so I will, in the first year ever of having a down year. And that was
Mhm.
a planful choice
Yeah.
that was enabled by having had some good years, but it was thoughtful, it was deliberate, but it was also an active choice to move in the zone of enoughness. Like I probably could have, I don't know if I could have, I don't know if I wanted to barrel through and did this on top, but that's at the consequence of my life, which I wasn't willing to.
Yeah.
I'm like, I did that in corporate already. Not I like that's why I'm not in corporate anymore, is because I want to have to always sacrifice my life for the thing that makes me the money.
Right. Yeah, and it makes it a lot and I had a similar thing where I had a year where and this is important for people who are perhaps gonna go through this. I had one year, I don't remember what year it was, where I still had my coaching business, my current business was ramping up, and my mobile, strategy consulting was ramping down. And it was like that was probably financially, I think that was my best year ever, but it doesn't really count. It's not fair because like I was working my ass off. So I had like I was working way more than I wanted to. And I let the retainer clients just churn basically. I just, I didn't try to extend them. It's just like, okay, I guess we're done here. Great. All right. And so I let them tail off while the new stuff was ramping up. So I knew after the last one tailed off, there was no way I was going to hit the same numbers the first year of. But knowing that it's all part of the plan and it's expected, takes some of the sting off of that. Like, last year I did great. Like I should be doing better every year. I should be doing a little better. But if it's all part of the plan, it helps, and I've definitely coached other people through this same transition. This sort of, I've heard the eating the fish transition. If somebody's transferring from to a subscription model, there's like the eating the fish thing, and you like have to get through it. But it stinks if you're the chief cook and bottle washer, and you're just looking at those numbers every month. It can be really hard to take. But as long if it's on purpose, you're like, this is the expectation. So what we're doing now, dear listener, is setting the expectation that if you do, it's normal, and you might not like it, but it's okay. As long as you've got your cash flow covered, you need to have your cash flow covered, or everything goes out the window somehow, whether it's savings or spouse or something. Uh, and actually, spouse is an interesting thing to bring into this because that would be a conversation I would have, because it's like, look, this is the plan. My piece of the income contribution is going to almost certainly go down this year, maybe by half. These are the reasons, and here's why. I'm thinking it's kind of like going back to school in a way.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm going to go get my MBA or whatever.
Yeah, in the book, in the Zone of Enoughness, I talk about kind of three financial scenarios. You have your survive number, your sustain number, and your strengthen and serve numbers. So those are what do you need to just like live? What do you need to live comfortably? And what are you doing to kind of like save for retirement and things like that? And it's really important to look at your entire household. I say in the book, I'm like, I am not the expert in this. Go learn from these experts, but that conversation is really important, especially sometimes you're not making the transition from one model to the other. Sometimes you're just like, it's my kids last year at school, or I'm a new mom, and I'm going to prioritize flexibility in the sense of more asynchronous offers, more things that are done through video, more things that like that means you can't maybe serve as like the agency type where you're
Mhm.
on lots of calls. Maybe it's like more batched deliverables that are over a longer period of time, which may be less lucrative, but allow you to have the freedom to do drop off and pick up in the rider line.
Mhm.
So it could be making a business transition, or it could be to say, it's my kid's first year in school, or I don't have good daycare coverage, so I need to change up my offer structures that to potentially be less lucrative. For now, maybe it's the same time, it's just with less meetings on the calendar that you have to
Right.
reschedule.
Yeah. And how far do you go into that? The different options, the sort of menu of choices that someone could choose from if they were a delivery business. How deeply do you go into that in the book? Because that'd be interesting.
There is a whole chapter on what I'm calling the passive income promise,
Hmm.
where passive income is not a promise. But there is an entire chapter on how to make delivery more resilient. So,
Okay.
different delivery structures. different marketing structures, different, I talk about, codification of your major assets that someone could deliver on your behalf, or you can have videos and things like that. So I really talk about how to, instead of like thinking, oh, well, the way I get flexibility is by launching a funnel and selling a course. Okay, how do you make doing delivery more resilient from a time and flexibility perspective, that things might resemble course like elements, or
Mhm.
things might resemble funnel type elements, but you're not trying to like push people through a funnel. You're giving them authority based assets to that are always on versus a,
Mhm.
churn and burn funnel. But so there's a chapter about how to make delivery and increase your revenue without having to have a different business model.
Right. I see what you mean. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. So like it's more like I like the way you put that. So just to highlight, it's like it might look like a funnel or it might look like a course because it might be automation, it might be videos, email automation or videos or whatever. But really what you're doing is optimizing your delivery so that you're not saying this, teaching all of your different, maybe you only have 3 clients, but if they're all asking you the same questions, why make 3 videos? As long as you're not billing by the hour, why make 3 videos? Sorry, why have 3 phone calls when you could just make 1 video and be like, hey, I know all of my clients are asking me the same question about AI or whatever. Here are my thoughts on it as of today, and I will keep you updated as it depends on what you're doing, of course, but um, I like to give examples. So here's another example. When I used to do software development, delivery business, I would, I don't think I certainly hardly ever would demo new features for people, and it was like for the client. So, there'd be these, okay, here's this list of features we need to get done. And instead of having a meeting with like me and at least 2 people from the other side, like the founder and like customer service person, maybe a salesperson, here's how, and the person who's going to use it, here's how it works. Da, 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 da. I go through the whole thing. They ask questions. I find a bug while I'm doing it. I'm like, oh, I'll add that to the list. And it was such a huge waste of time, and that's the way most people do it, I think, to this day. And just switching to a model where, and I stumbled into this because I'm a night owl and I would finish stuff late at night, and then I would want to get it over with. And so I started making video walkthroughs of like, okay, here's the ticket, here's what I finished, here's the walkthrough. I'd find a bug, like, oh, dang it, and I'd stop the video, I'd fix the bug, I'd start over. So it was almost like a QA step, but it decreased so much of the back and forth and the synchronous because I ended up testing my own stuff better than I had normally. Then the video's done. I send it to everyone, and then there's like no follow-up questions because they can just keep going back to the video if the customer service person forgets how it works and she's trying to walk someone through, the whatever the example was, and then she can just go look at the video. I'll be like, "Oh, that was in the video." And so it's and this isn't even across multiple clients. It's just an efficiency. Since I wasn't billing for my time, every hour I saved is money in my pocket. So I just naturally started to gravitate to these things that were more asynchronous, less synchronous, and fewer meetings because they're almost always a big waste of time for everybody, and not always, but a lot of times. And then if you're saving time, it's also saving time for them. And so lots of little things like that would crop up to optimize the delivery in a way that, you might create a training video. So like you're onboarding you have a new client, they're going to use your Slack or your Basecamp instance or whatever. Have a onboarding video. Maybe that's an email sequence. Maybe there's an engagement sequence, right? So it looks like the kind of thing a creator would do. You're using some of the same tools, but you're really just optimizing delivery.
Exactly. So for my clients, I was explaining how I build relationships. I have a 3-part framework that's not in the book, but I was always coming up with prompts and things like that. I was like, okay, we'll use this prompt and use this email. And I decided, okay, I need to just put this in a database. So I put it in a database and I filmed some videos about how to use the database. And then I was like, you know what this would be? This would be a great course that I could sell. So I didn't build it for them. I built it first so I had a place to like put all my prompts so I didn't have to keep referencing different, Google Docs and things like that. I put it in, I organized it. It forced me to clarify my thinking. So that's a
Hmm.
great authority thing.
Hmm.
It was useful for every one of my clients. And then I called this selling the byproduct. I
Yeah.
didn't make a course to sell. I built something for my clients and I made money from it.
Hmm. Yeah,
But I
I
didn't have
refer
to
to it as
like,
sawdust.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where I probably got it from. But I didn't go out to build a course business. I went out to be delivery, streamline delivery for everybody, because then they don't have to begin on the call with me to, I filmed a video about how to set up your CRM,
Yep.
right? Well, every CRM is basically the same thing. So instead of having to explain to every client, they can watch it, they can, film it on their own time. Onboarding's the same way. It looks like a content library, but it is not. It is a delivery assets. Also, that's for sales enablement. I
Mhm.
have a video about my, the 4 marketing approaches that I talk about in the book. I filmed some slides. I put that in my email welcome sequence, and I said, if you'd like to learn more about how I work, you should download this one video. And a lot of people watch it and they tell me it's great. And I'm like, I didn't, now I don't have to put out lots of social media content or even new emails for people to see me in action. They just shows up in their inbox and they get to spend 30 to 45 minutes with me
Exactly. Yeah, while you're sleeping.
while I'm
So
sleeping.
let's that's a good segue into the marketing. Uh, what you just mentioned about marketing. Let's segue into that. So like for the however way you want to slice it, however it is in the book, like the different marketing techniques or strategies or whatever channels, even for different kinds of businesses. Let's say let's focus maybe more on the delivery businesses
Yeah.
if there is a distinction there.
Well, I call there's the 4 stages, which is the similar funnel that everyone's seen before, although I think it's a circle. I call it connection, consideration, conversion, and champion. These are not new things, but everyone I talk to thinks social media is a connection tool, and it's especially for delivery based owners, it's almost never that. It might be a cherry on top of the consideration where people see you and hear more about you, but it's those 4 stages. And then there are strategies: outreach, broadcast, and discovery. The challenge is people want to park themselves in broadcast. They're like, I'm going to have an email newsletter, I'm going to have a podcast, I'm going to do social media, yet there's no one on their lists. Or they even start building assets. I want to be found in search. I want to be, although I do want you to have assets that can be found in ChatGPT and AI, those that's important. But I'm like, if you need clients right now, your connection strategy, your get to know me strategy, consideration, your sales strategy, and your get people to amplify your stuff, which is that's all people. It's all talking and having dialogue to people. I'm like, nothing that puts any latency between you and another person should be in your tech stack when
Right.
you're starting, like,
Yep.
period.
Agreed.
And if you're like, oh, well, how am I going to find them? Social media helps me find them. I'm like, well, if you don't know how to get access to your target market, start make talking to as many people as possible and getting connections to that market, because maybe in 2015, when the market wasn't saturated, social media maybe did the work for you. But now, if you want to be found on social media, you have to be really good at being funny. And I am not good at being funny.
Yeah, well, that was funny.
I
Social
don't,
media, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I totally agree. If you need clients now, you need to optimize for conversations, one-on-one conversations. It's fine if they're remote, it's fine if they're chat based, but you need to be talking to individuals a lot. And a lot of, especially the introvert engineering types that seem to get attracted to me don't want to hear that. But look, if you need the money, like referrals, everything, like work the phones, air quotes, it's like smiling, dialing. And this is not it's I would categorize it kind of in the networking category just to kind of make it sound a little less spammy, but I would include cold outreach in that. But all past clients, all past colleagues, friends and family that aren't even in your business that might know someone who is. I have a PDF called the Introduction Game that like outlines a specific sort of basic, simple way to do this. But like, get the people who know and trust you to introduce you to people who know and trust them. And if there's a need, then great. But you need to be clear about what your value proposition is. That certainly helps.
Yeah, and I think there's this assumption that, okay, well, once they're on my email list, I just have to email them. I'm like, every one of my sales has come from even people who are on my email list, shoulder tapping and saying, all right, do you want to work together now? What's most useful for you? When I am, this maybe isn't what some of the audience wants to hear, but I'm like, if you are a delivery based business, you should be doing 20 hours of delivery a week. And if you don't have clients to make up the 20 hours of delivery, or more accurately, half of your working time, so maybe you only
Yeah,
work
yeah, yeah.
20 hours and it's, that's a 40-hour work week. But if you're like, half of your time should be either spent delivering for clients or talking to as many people as you can, join communities, join programs, buy other people's stuff. Like this is the a lot of times there are people that are like, oh, I'm just gonna like kind of wait for people to come to me. I'm like, no, pick up the phone,
Yeah, yeah,
pick up your texting, mail cards, join communities,
yeah.
have lots of conversations. And I know that it sounds, well, doesn't sound leverage. It doesn't sound scaled. I'm like, well, you don't have anything to scale yet. So
Yeah, you have no leverage.
you have no leverage. So
Yeah.
that's it's less of this. The marketing one is more of like a compilation of all the advice I've heard, but everyone's like, let's go. Oh, I need to market, so I need to go on social media. I'm like, no, you don't. You can have an entirely, one of my clients, she's a literacy consultant.
Mhm.
She needs 3 clients a year
Right,
because she
that's
works
the
with
thing.
schools.
Yeah.
They're all people that she knows from her professional network. She buys and sends them coffees. Yeah, she has a newsletter that goes out to once a month, but she gets all of her clients through relationships. She hits every single one of those 4 stages just through going to conferences and emailing 5 people a week and tell them that she's thinking of them, sending articles, sending cat memes. Like
Yep.
that's how she's making her money.
Yeah. That totally works. Like, that's for me, maybe this isn't fair, but I feel like most of the people I've worked with, that makes their skin crawl, but so does social media. Um, they and the reason it makes their skin crawl is because they feel like they're being sneaky because they know they have an ulterior motive. And it's like, well, that almost feels like something you should talk to your psychiatrist about because I don't know how to help you with that. And that's not what's happening here. Like, yes, yes, maybe someday they're going to hire you. But if you are not connected to a lot of people, whether it's followers on LinkedIn or it's people in your email, your contact list, no one's going to know about you. So like but I totally agree with your implication, if not you're explicitly saying it, that social media was a lot easier maybe 10 years ago, maybe even less than that. It's like there are professional people making money being, hot and funny online. So it's like, I mean, you gonna compete with that? I don't know. I don't want to. I don't even want to try. Like, forget it. I mean, yeah, I have automations that post to LinkedIn or whatever, but it's like, anyway, so you have to do something. I mean, that's the moral of the story is you have to do something. No one like, you build it and they'll come in. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That is a fantasy.
But there's lots of people that are going to sell you the how to make your Instagram Reels course and the how to ghostwrite on LinkedIn
Yeah.
course and the let me god the worst part is the and this goes into the hiring chapter a little bit like
Mhm.
the people that are like let me get you 30 qualified leads on the calendar for sales calls. I'm like the spammy DMs you get on LinkedIn all the time. I'm like, how are you? One, I don't need 30 sales calls. If I only need 1 client a month for my business model.
Mm.
So why the hell would I have? Sorry if I'm not allowed to curse, but
That's fine.
so if I only need 1 sales call a month to convert, why do I need 30 qualified leads? And why would I
Yeah.
want to have 30 poor sales conversations with people that don't know me, that don't know my approach, and don't know my story and don't have my
Mm.
connections? Why would I want to do that? Right? Yes, selling is hard, but I can't outsource sales.
Mm.
And
Say
that's
more
what
about that. Say more about that. You can't outsource sales.
well, until you know how to get sales repeatedly, you cannot outsource the sales conversations. Like you might have like a VA that might do some outbound research for you, but they're always buying you, they're buying your authority, they're buying your story, and everyone's being, pitch slapped by terrible AI cold outreach. Um, you know, that's not how it works. They don't know how to tell your story, not until when you're talking about selling, you know, 10 to you've had your first what my one of my clients calls your first 100 repeatable sales, then you can start talking about having a salesperson. But until you know cold exactly what to say on a sales call, the objections, you've got your offer dialed, why would you give up that customer intel
Yeah.
to anybody else that's not you when you're starting or even, before you've really gotten some sales momentum?
Yeah. This is a really hard pill for people to swallow. That's why I wanted you to go into it because the salesperson or demand gen or whatever, biz dev, if you don't know what you're selling, they are not going to magically know. Like if you don't know your value proposition, if you don't know the bait that has the fish jumping into the boat, pick your metaphor. If you don't know it, they're not going to magically figure it out for you. And even if they tried, first of all, that wouldn't be their job. But if they were just a generalist and they were also going to figure out your positioning, let's say, you're going to resist it because you don't believe it, because they're gonna say like, oh well, I know, okay, so you solve hard problems for smart people. So we just needed, so you want me to just get a bunch of sales calls lined up with smart people who have problems? Like, it's insane when you think about it. Like, what's the poor person supposed to do? Just cold call for you? Like, I mean,
And I think that's what exactly what they do, and they end up spamming people through your own LinkedIn account, which could get you banned anyways from the platform. But
yeah,
then your feed is filled with people who you don't know, who you don't want to know, who you have no connection with. Like it's just bad all around. But those are things that you can't hire for out quickly in your business either. Like everyone wants to hire messaging and copywriting. I'm like, well, they can only work with the raw material that you have. So if you don't know what you stand for and you don't know your point of view and you don't have the isms that you like to say,
uh-huh,
I don't know how a copywriter is going to put that in your mouth that makes it sound like your copy. Now, like at some point, yeah, like my copywriter took all of my phrases and all of my writing and turned it into amazing web copy. But that was like the third time I finally like, oh, I finally am far enough in my writing so that
yeah.
this copywriting sounds like me because I've done it enough to know what me sounds like.
That's what I was gonna say. It's like that only works if you have a ton of writing.
Yes.
So, and this is so you mentioned email lists a couple of times, and like certain kinds of businesses don't need an email list. And of course, I agree with that, because there's always like, there's no one silver bullet for everyone. But the thing about having an email list is that it forces you to figure out what the hell you stand for. And it's not like, so there's this one model where I was having a conversation with someone recently about how having, working with a good web person to like do your site like throws people into an existential crisis because they don't know what to say. Like the web designer's not going to tell you what to say. They just need some words to put on the page. And they raise all these questions like, who's your ideal buyer? What do you do for them? What's your promise? Are there any guarantees? What's your list of products? Like all of these things. And they panic because they don't have, the website is the sort of inciting event that causes this identity panic. And I think it's way less threatening. Again, this is all through the lens of people who I typically work with. They know their stuff. They're really good at it. They probably have a lot of experience with client work, so they're not new. They probably have a couple of kids at home that are still in elementary school or around there, and they know what's up. Like they know how to do good stuff. But they can't boil it all down to a website, for example, all at once, or they couldn't boil it into a book all at once. But they can write an email every week, or they can write an email every 3 times a week, or 5 times, or 7 times a week. And they can just have this impulse to like, okay, here's what I'm going to write about. It's roughly for this kind of person. Maybe it's not real figured out yet. But doing that for like half a year, if you did it like every day, like I think people, I really strongly, at least 5 days a week, people. Anyway, it's not that it's going to get you clients, certainly not immediately, but you are going to find out what you stand for. You're going to find out what your isms are. You're going to find out what chaps your ass. You're going to find out what you love. You're going to find out what you think everybody's doing wrong. And all of a sudden, someone like a good copywriter could take that and pull out like, oh, okay, here are all the sound bites. Here's what you stand for. Here are your values. Like, oh, yeah, you're right. That is,
But then I love that. I advocate that for my clients too. But I think that's where it's like looking from a marketing lens is like, you're not writing to sell, you're writing to think. And those are two
yeah.
different parts. If you're assuming that your emails are going to sell your stuff,
Hmm.
then I would potentially
Agreed.
question
Totally agree.
that. So it's like write to think
Hmm.
and write to get clarity on how you do what you do, right, to create assets that can eventually become these productized services and
Yeah.
things like that. But recognize that if you're writing every day, but you only have 100 people on your list and your ideal clients don't necessarily read your emails because, that's not what they do with their time,
Hmm.
then you got to slot something else in that marketing stages stack to for the consideration stage of literal biz dev versus writing as an authority building practice.
Yeah. Yeah, the daily, certainly daily email practice, it's a long game. It's nothing
Yeah,
like direct outreach or cold outreach or networking.
exactly.
It's nowhere, it's you're planting a garden, you're not hunting for buffalo with a spear. So, I see the clock, where this has been such a fun conversation. It went flying by. Where can people go to find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah. So my website is deeperfoundations.com, and the uh, book site is uh, /casino. So deeperfoundations.com /casino. I'm still negotiating the final pre-release date with my publisher. We're targeting a mid-October uh, launch date publicly on the site. So you can go there now and download the first sample chapter and hear about how I found myself in the entrepreneur casino and how I left.
Excellent. I love it. Thanks so much, Jessica.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that's it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark, and I hope you join me again next time for Ditching Hourly. Bye.